So I have a pretty good story here about this build. I joined a random LFG for the Moon Grandmaster, and a couple minutes in, one of the randoms said this to me. At least he was kind of nice about it and just didn't go off the hook like I have seen a lot of people do when it comes to choosing what build you're running. But I thought this was a prime example of how we shouldn't judge a book by its cover. When the Grandmaster finished, this was the results. So I'm not gonna lie, I kinda had to put some Guardians in my backpack today. But I wanted to show you guys this because when you understand how a build works together between all of its parts, we're talking correct subclass setup, paired with an exotic weapon and exotic armor piece, then add the right mods into the mix, you get builds like this one that are obviously great in their own right, as you can see, but that's as long as you play into their strengths and you learn how to play the build and the ability rotation that goes along with it. So I just wanted to make that point that Destiny 2 has a lot of options when it comes to builds, and you don't always have to run the meta of the meta. So the build I present to you today is the Scorching Dawn. This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. In this day and age, we all have a life on social media and the internet. This is especially true for gamers like us that play a variety of games, which means we're always connected to the internet, and that can be really scary with cyber criminals and all the personal information they can get about you online. Well, that's where Surfshark VPN really helps out. As a virtual private network, it keeps your online identity safe by encrypting all of the information sent between you and your devices and between the internet. This keeps all your personal data protected no matter what you're doing online. On top of securing your online data, Surfshark VPN allows you to change your virtual location. This allows you to get early access to games by switching time zones and play something a day early. Surfshark can also monitor your personal data and keep you alert. It can keep your device virus-free with antivirus and hide from search engines with the search feature. And what's really great is Surfshark offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there is no risk to try it out. Click my link down below at the top of the description or in the pinned comment and use my code THEBOOTY to get up to 6 additional months free as a Black Friday special deal. Make sure you all stay safe out there in this online world that we live in, and get Surfshark VPN for yourself. Now, the first thing I want to talk about with this build is a fragment called Ember of Benevolence. I haven't really covered this since it got buffed a while back, but I'm telling you guys, when you are doing any activity that you have any other guardians around you, so this means raids, grandmasters, dungeons, whatever it may be where you have other players with you, you better be taking this fragment on any solar subclass. And the reason for this is applying Restoration, Cure, or Radiant to allies grants increased grenade, melee, and class ability regeneration for a short duration. And this is a huge boost. It grants 400% additional base grenade, melee, and class ability regeneration for 6 seconds. And this also can be triggered over and over. There's no cooldown on this, which means if you can apply Radiant and Restoration that often with your abilities, then you're gonna have this procced all the time. So for example, in the solo gameplay that you're watching, I wasn't even taking advantage of this with this build. So just imagine what you're seeing on screen, but another 400% additional base grenade, melee, and class ability coming back to me to cycle things even quicker. So yeah, that's how powerful this is. When I was with that LFG group, this was proccing all the time and it was doing wonders for me. Now, since we need to apply those buffs to take advantage of this, we are going to take Ember of Torches. This is our second fragment and it's going to be powered melee attacks against combatants make you and nearby allies radiant. So very simple, and if we can cycle this melee over and over, then we have an infinite source of proccing that Ember of Benevolence for us, right? So our goal is to keep that melee up as much as possible. And speaking of your melee, we do want to take Celestial Fire in difficult content, because that means we don't have to be as close to enemies to hit them with that powered melee and activate our Radiant. If you were doing easier content, then you could take Incinerator Snap because it is technically better, but in difficult content, I would still stay with Celestial Fire because you can proc it from a mile away on a boss. And then speaking of your other ability, we are going to take Healing Rift. This is the way that we're going to cast our Rift and grant Restoration. So when another player on your team walks through your Rift, that procs Ember of Benevolence. And if they walk out of your Rift and back into your Rift, it reprocs it again for its 6 seconds. So you're going to be throwing down a ton of Rifts with your teammates. And then for your grenade, I do still like Fusion Grenade with this build. I tried the Solar Grenade. The Solar Grenade is still very strong, but with a 2.5 minute cooldown and with the mods changes coming next season, Fusion Grenade is going to be better because the cooldown of it is still like a minute and 10 seconds. And that's even without 100 discipline. For your two aspects, we're going to take Touch of Flame. This just makes our Fusion Grenade explode twice and deal that much more damage, which what makes Fusion Grenades on the Warlock so strong. And then your second aspect is up to you. This could be Icarus Dash or Heat Rises, so whatever you prefer. I like Heat Rises because final blows while airborne increase the duration of Heat Rises and grant melee energy. And the main thing is just that melee energy. I want to keep that melee up all the time to proc my Radiant for me and my teammates, which feeds Ember of Benevolence, and that melee still feeds our entire build build with the mods we're going to be choosing. For your last two fragments on the build, we're going to take Ember of Singeing. This grants 300% additional base class ability regeneration for 3 seconds when you apply Scorch to enemies. And we're going to be applying Scorch through a variety of ways. Our melee does this, our grenade does this, and both our weapons are going to do this. So now we have Ember of Singeing giving us 300% class ability rate, and Ember of Benevolence giving us 400% additional base, grenade, melee, and class ability. So the class ability is coming back very quickly. And then for our last fragment, this one is interchangeable, but I like Ember of Ashes. You apply more Scorch stacks to targets. This just means that our grenade and our melee, when we combo those two together, will cause an ignition. And it makes our Scorch coming from our weapons stack more Scorch on targets, which will equal more ignitions overall. And next season, with the solar artifact coming and a lot of extra solar things that we'll be able to add to this build, it's gonna make it crazy. Now for your two weapons, I will say in the heavy slot, I really like my Fix Odd heavy machine gun. I have Incandescent on this bad boy. So again, any kills I get, and that's super easy kills to get with a heavy machine gun on enemies, right? We'll proc that Incandescent and Scorch all the nearby enemies. And this is gonna feed our exotic and our melee. And then for your secondary, this one's kind of up to you. There's a lot of different options here. You could go with Skyburner's Oath or Polaris Lance on their own. This means you can Scorch targets without having to get a kill. So that's really nice, but they are primary weapons and they take a little longer to kill because of their archetype of their weapon. But another great choice here is Sunshot in easier content when you can kill things very quickly, or even in endgame content as well. Sunshot is very strong, and again, it's only going to get better next season. But the weapon you see me using in the gameplay is actually Jotun. This is a special fusion rifle, and you all know it's called the Toaster, and it does have Incandescent as its catalyst. This thing hits very hard on enemies. It can one-shot most red bars, which then instantly procs its Incandescent perk and scorches enemies around it. And with our heavy machine gun killing stuff so quickly and proccing Incandescent, it's also applying Scorch to everything around it. So you have two weapons that can kill pretty much instantly in the hardest content in the game that's proccing our Scorch for us. The reason this is so important is because we're adding in Dawn Chorus as our exotic armor piece. This has the Rites of Ember perk. Your Daybreak projectiles deal more damage and Scorch targets on impact. Your Scorch is improved, and you gain a small amount of melee energy when your Scorch damages a target. This is really good for the Daybreak super because it does 90% increased damage for every blade that you throw out at enemies, and it also allows 2 blades with Ember of Ashes on to cause an ignition. So we're doing a ton of damage with our super, and Daybreak projectiles can often hit twice for double damage and double Scorch, which is really cool. And then in PvE, our Scorch, which is coming from our melee ability, our grenade ability, and both our weapons very often, deal 200% increased damage, and each damage tick grants 5% melee ability energy. So if you're scorching the battlefield, you're getting a bunch of these ticks going off, you're getting that melee energy coming back, and that melee energy that you're getting for Celestial Fire is just feeding your Radiant, which Radiant is feeding Benevolence, and you guys can just see how the loop goes. So then all our mods are spec'd into our weapon and causing extra damage, and then making that melee feed all our other abilities as well. So on the helmet, you're just going to take double Harmonic Siphon, so our solar weapons create Orbs of Power, and then I took an Ashes to Assets. This could be replaced with something else. But on the gauntlets, we have some important mods here. We're going to take Focusing Strike, so grants class ability energy when you cause damage with a melee attack, and we're going to take Impact Induction, causing damage with a melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown. So that melee that we're getting over and over because of Dawn Chorus, and we're throwing it out so often, is then just feeding our grenade and our class ability. And we also have Ember of Benevolence feeding all 3 abilities, and Ember of Singeing feeding the class ability. And then we're also going to take Momentum Transfer, causing damage with a grenade reduces your melee cooldown. So then when we throw that fusion grenade out, it's then feeding back into our melee. On the chest piece, this is your damage resistance, and then I also like to take a Harmonic Reserves. This is just to give us extra solar weapon ammo for that Jotun and our heavy machine gun. On our boots, we're taking 3 solar weapon surges. This is so we get that 22% increase in weapon damage to our solar weapons, and we have 2 of those. And this also stacks with Radiance, so we're doing a lot of extra damage with our solar weapons. And then on our class item, you're going to take Time Dilation to make that solar weapon damage boost last 15 seconds instead of just 10. And then we're going to take Outreach and Bomber. So each time you cast that Rift, which we're going to be getting a ton thanks to Ember of Benevolence and Ember of Singeing, that's just going to feed back into our melee and our grenade. So everything we're doing is just cycling to that melee and then feeding all the other abilities. As you can see in the gameplay, it's very strong, and what you were watching again was solo. So that means Ember of Benevolence wasn't proccing in all this gameplay. So when you saw that final result of how well I did with the LFG group in the Moon Grandmaster, that just shows the power of this build and how many options you have available when it comes to abilities and getting that super back very quickly. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. The new season is just a couple days away, and I plan to be making a ton of builds and putting those out for you guys, so I hope you enjoy them. Solar builds are going to go crazy. I think stasis builds are going to be pretty strong. I know a lot of people are writing them off already, and I think Strand is going to be really strong. But I already have a few ideas with what we can do with a couple different things, and I think you're going to be surprised, so I hope you guys look forward to that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a great rest of your day.